Magician's Nephew, which is the book in the reading order before Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. I'm just going to read quickly just the first little bit of the blurb of the book, just so you get sort of an idea of what it's about. The author writes, "This is a very important story because it shows how the comings and goings between our own world and the land of Narnia first began. It was one of the wettest and coldest summers for years, as Polly and Diggory decided to explore the attic of an old, tall house. Carefully, they stepped over the rafters and crept along the dark corridor that joined their two houses to the empty house beyond. What would they discover? This is how they stumbled onto the secret workroom of Diggory's uncle, Andrew. And when, in a wild experiment, he makes Polly vanish right out of the world, it was obvious that the doll Samuel was changing rapidly into a strange and totally thrilling adventure." Okay, these are some of the quotes out of the book that make it the most interesting. So one of them is by the author. "Exactly as he spoke, Polly's hand went out to touch one of the rings, and immediately, without a flash or noise of warning of any sort, there was no Polly." This was the first reference to someone going from our world into Narnia. And then another one down here, this is a quote by Aslan. It says, "You see, friends," he said, "that before the new clean world I give you is 7 hours old," there he's talking about Narnia, "a force of evil, the witch, has already entered it, walked and brought hither by the son of Adam," which is the professor.
That's what I do.
The origin of the book. It was written by C.S. Lewis, and it was the first book he started writing of the Narnia Chronicles, but it wasn't released until after 5 other books. The reading order is The Magician's Nephew, then The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, but it wasn't released like that. It was only released because someone said to him, "Why does all this happen in Narnia?" So the exact same questions that we've been asking. It started off as a book called The Lefay Fragment, which is about Diggory's fairy godmother, as it were, someone she's related to, who's got special powers. The idea was that Diggory, who turns out to be the professor, was born with a power that he was able to speak to trees and animals, a bit like Dr. Dolittle. And one day he meets Polly, and Polly decides that they need to build a playhouse. So Diggory ends up cutting one of the branches off a tree in the woods behind his house, and suddenly he's lost his powers. And Aunt Lefay decides that the only way he can fix that is by sending him into another world. But that book never got finished, and he used some of the ideas from that to write The Magician's Nephew. But some of the characters changed, such as Lefay is no longer the fairy godmother. She's an assistant to Diggory's uncle. Okay. The Wood Between Worlds. When Uncle Andrew first sends Polly into what you would presume is Narnia, it's not. There's actually a wood that they automatically get sent into, and then you can jump into different pools, and that sends you to other different worlds, which shows the idea that instead of just Narnia, the author was actually thinking of writing different worlds as opposed to just the Narnia Chronicles. So it started off as an idea and it just branched into the Narnia instead. The idea was that Uncle Andrew, Diggory's uncle, made 2 rings out of a box of dust he was given by his aunt. These rings, one was yellow, one was green, and there was 3 sets of them. Now, his uncle, attempting to see if it did lead to other worlds, had already tested this on guinea pigs, but of course he had no way to get them back into the real world and to explain what they'd experienced. So he tricked Polly into touching the yellow ring, which sent her into the Wood Between Worlds, and after her, Diggory went in to find her. If you put these yellow rings on when you're in the Wood Between Worlds and jump into another pool, you get sent into another world. The first world they got sent into was Charn, and then if you put the green rings back on and jump in the pool again, actually no, I don't think it works that way. I think if you just put the green rings on, you get sent back to the human world. Okay, questions answered that we've been asking about The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe that lead into The Magician's Nephew. Okay, Diggory Kirk does turn out to be the professor in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe, but at this age he is only young, only just into his teenage years, so about 12, 13. We've already said he's Uncle Andrew's nephew, and he lives there because his mum is seriously ill, terminally ill, in bed, and has nobody to look after him, so he had to move up to London, which is where they live. His dad's away in India, trying to get some money. He meets Polly in unforeseen circumstances when he's been crying, and he bumps into her and she feels sorry for him and realises that our houses are connected. And they go through and they find Uncandrew's thing, and obviously they get tricked into going into the Between Worlds. When they're in there, they decide to explore a little bit, and they go to the World of Charm, which is where Diggory accidentally wakes the White Witch, who's been under a spell that she cast for herself. And he rings a bell and wakes her up, which accidentally brings her back to the human world. Then, after a while, when Narnia is created, he gets taken to Narnia, and he asks Aslan if there is any way that he can cure his mother. And he says the only way you can do that is by helping me first. And he's sent to go and get an apple from a garden behind the Golden Gates to plant that will make sure that the witch stays away from Narnia. So he goes and he gets this apple, and he goes with Polly on the back of a flying horse called Strawberry, or is later known as Fledge, which is what the picture is in The House in the Country. And he goes and gets one of these apples and takes it back. And then Aslan says he can have one for himself. And he takes it home to his mother, cures his mother, and then goes and plants the apple core in the garden where it blooms into a glorious apple tree. The apple tree isn't quite as magic as the one in Narnia, but it still grows, and it's the most beautiful apples in England. Empress Jadis, the White Witch. Right, the White Witch started off as an empress in the World of Charm, which is the first place that they deliver. She's related, or she had a sister, but they got into a massive war, and Charn is quite desolate because the only way Jadis could win was when her sister's armies were trashing the castle, and she used something called the deplorable word, which nobody knows what it is, and it's a word down by history that she had to use many evil means to get hold of, which destroyed every living thing in her world. So there she was all by herself. She accounted herself the Queen of Charm. She's related to a mix of giants and a woman originally called Lilitha. Now, Lilitha was rumoured to be the first wife of Adam, as in Adam and Eve. The first wife of Adam, so she's related from Adam and Eve. And the giant is obviously why she's quite big and powerful, and she's quite magic. That bit. Lamppost. The lamppost. When Jadis got taken into the real world, accidentally by Diggory, she was fighting with a policeman, and she wrenched the lamppost off the ground, or took part of the lamppost off. And then when she got taken into Narnia, she tried to throw this bit of the lamppost at Aslan, and as all things were starting to grow in Narnia, as the lamppost hit the floor, it sort of grew up into a lamppost that was always lit, and that became to be known as the Lantern Waste, and that's the lamppost that Lucy finds. The wardrobe. You remember I said earlier that he planted the core of the apple in the garden? That grew up to be a tree. Now, later on in Diggory's life, his father won lots of money, and they moved to a house in the country, the big house that's in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. But eventually, when Uncle Andrew died, that house became Diggory's. One day, the tree fell down, and he couldn't bear to chop it up for firewood, so he took it and framed it into a glorious wardrobe, which he put in one of the spare rooms in his house. He didn't know it was magic, but the magic was obviously still running through the tree from its days in Narnia. So that's how that came. Kings and Queens of Narnia. When Jadis and the children went back into when Narnia was first created, they accidentally took with them a horse called Strawberry and the cab driver that was driving the horse. And Aslan appointed them kings and queens of Narnia, and Aslan brought his wife into the world, just like that. There was no means of transportation, he just brought her into the world, and decided to account them king and queen, and said that, here, then you shall have done all that a king should do. Your coronation will be held presently, and you and your children and grandchildren shall be blessed, and some will be kings of Narnia, and others will be kings of Archenland, which lies yonder over the southern mountains. And therefore all sons of Adam and Eve will be welcome. So that leads on to some of their sons became rulers of Archenland, which is Prince Caspian, the book, after Lion, the Witch and Wardrobe, that's where the humans came from. 2 by 2. This is a religious reference. When Aslan first created Narnia, he selected 2 of each animal and allowed them to speak and be more intelligent than the rest. This is religious in the reference to Noah picking 2 animals of each and bring them onto the ship to save them. He liberated 2 of each animal. Aslan. It doesn't actually reference in the book where Aslan came from. It just says he appears. They all put on the yellow rings and they appear in just blackness, just complete black. They can't see anything, they can't hear anything. And they're arguing and suddenly they hear a beautiful singing, something that scares them but is beautiful. And they then start to see light and things growing, and Aslan just appears out of the darkness. He is the first thing that is seen, and he is the biggest and most amazing thing they have ever seen in their life, and he is the first one to speak. We don't know where his powers have come from. And that's it.